Welcome back, Watch Crazy people, and today we're going to re-explore The King by Mr. Jones Watches. A quick disclaimer before we dive in, I was kindly given this watch about 8 months ago to review by MJW. I have not been paid for this or any of my MJW watch reviews, and I have been given full rein to say whatever I like about them. Now, if you haven't seen any of my previous videos on this and The Last Laugh, and the review by my good buddy WAP69 on these two beauties, then do check them out. Links are in the description below. I have also included a link to Mr. Jones Watches website. So, as I finally had a decent amount of wrist time with this beauty, what do I now actually think of it? Well, let's start off with the negatives. Inevitably, straight off the bat, this watch is not going to be to everyone's taste. It's not a serious timepiece in that regard. It's a fun watch as well as serving a purpose, and this particular model might be a bit small on the wrist for some, though, as fellow YouTuber Ross from Ross Wristwatch Love approves in his excellent video on his stunning array of Hamilton watches, link in description, having a bigger wrist size doesn't mean you shouldn't wear smaller watches. In fact, you can easily pull off the look, so really you're lucky because you have more to choose from. The case size on this is 37mm, however if you do prefer a bigger watch, Mr. Jones does make a 40mm case, but usually with different design dial configurations. So this one, for example, only currently comes in a 37mm. Personally, anything between 36mm to 40mm is perfect. The next negative, though also being the biggest positive, is the dial. It's not that you cannot read the time, it's tricky initially. But after I'd say about a week or two with it on the wrist, it does become second nature and easy to read at a glance, but it does take some time getting used to. Numbers are small, but nowhere near as small as those on a chronograph, subdial for example. But once you've used it, it's like riding a bike, so if you do take it off for a week or two, put it back on your wrist, you're not going to have any problems. And finally, for the negatives, that is, the case. Not Mr. Jones's fault necessarily, or obviously, really. This is a problem with all polished watch cases. It's a fingerprint magnet, and as it is fairly thin, it's quickly covered. I've wiped this down God knows how many times just to film it with minimal fingerprints, and I still manage to struggle. So, then on to the good points. Something I touched upon in an earlier video on The Last Laugh was the fact that these watches are pieces of art designed by well-known and upcoming artists, and it's quite possible that the artist becomes more recognised and therefore more famous over time, potentially making the watch more valuable. I didn't just say that to get your attention because it's true, and here are just a handful of examples. Only a few months ago, you could have bought yourself one of these really cool fun limited edition timepieces for just £175, and had you have done, you would have potentially made yourself a pretty decent profit because the most recent one that sold went for a smidge over £800, that's $1,125. Who's having the last laugh now? Sorry, bad pun, couldn't help myself. Inevitably, this watch is a limited edition one. Like this one, which also now sells above its original recommended retail price. But it is proof that these watches not only hold their value if limited in numbers, they can go up in price as well. And those that are not limited but have been discontinued will more likely increase in value too. The awesome thing about this is Mr. Jones watches aren't milking the proverbial cash cow by charging you hefty prices for their limited edition watches, unlike almost every other watch brand. And what other watches in this price range do you know of that have the potential to double or even quadruple in value within just a few months? Now, another positive, every time I go out with this on the wrist, just like with The Last Laugh, on average, I'd say about 6 out of the 10 people in close enough proximity, that is, ask me about it. A handful of those individuals' initial reactions are, "What's that on your wrist?" And they look at the dial expecting to see a printed picture of a playing card with ordinary watch hands in front, like some cheap junk from DHgate, I suppose. They look kind of confused as they realise there are no hands and ask, how are you supposed to tell the time on that? Does it even tell the time? I show them how it works, and they are all thoroughly impressed. How can you not be? You have to admit the design and functionality is pretty darn cool, regardless if you like the watch or not. As with all of Mr. Jones' watches, the designs are completely unique. You will not find any other watch brand producing these style of watches. Each watch has its own unique means of telling the time and are handmade and hand-assembled in London, with each colour painstakingly layered one by one. A lot of thought, love and effort has been put into the production on each and every one. And the beautiful thing about each dial being individually layered by hand is that no two dials will ever be exactly the same, just like with the hand enamel dials on the Patek Philippe World Time, which makes them more desirable. The movement is Chinese, just like with pretty much 90% of established and micro brands. The NH35S, for example, used in nearly every micro brand watch, are made in Chinese factories, and though excellent, are not manufactured to the same high standards as the Japanese-made NH35s or 4R35s, as they are otherwise known. Plus, many of the movements used by micro and boutique brands are mass-produced and churned out quickly and cheaply, whereas the ST1721 movement used in this is made to order. You cannot go online and pick one of these up, which invariably means they are not mass-produced and marginally more expensive to purchase and go through more stringent quality control checks before they leave the factory, as well as being further checked and collaborated at Mr. Jones's studios. And as I've previously noted in the past, you will not find another artisan watch at this price point, which is currently £215. So, to sum up, we have a cool looking automatic watch that starts conversations, brings a smile to your face every time you look at your wrist, has the potential to go up in value, or at the very least not drop as much in value in the used market compared to the likes of Seiko or Casio. And it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg to own. Now, another great indication of how sought after a brand may be is when counterfeiters start making replicas of said watches. And as much as I do not condone the sale or purchase of counterfeits, replicas of Mr. Jones watches, or at least poorly made replicas, are being produced. So as terrible as that may be, it should tell you something about how great and special Mr. Jones watches really are. They're not going to be for everyone, but for those who are intrigued and want one, then they are truly fantastic timepieces. You will not be disappointed. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you enjoy this video. Until the next time.